Hello everybody, Namaskar to you all. I am Dr. Annu Bhai Soni again with you to continue the discussion on Indian Penal Code, particularly on Section 34 and 149 in the context of principle of constructive joint liability. The very important principles, general principles of the criminal law. It is known as the principle of constructive joint liability. It is nicely adopted by the Indian Penal Code under Section 34 and 149. Since it is a so important principles of criminal law that it is globally adopted by the different law of crimes of different nation of the world. So it is established as a general principles of the law of crimes. It is not a specific law of crimes of a specific law of a specific country, but it is a general principle of law of crime which is globally adopted. Now, what is this? Actually, it is a principle of vicarious liability. It is a principle of joint liability. It shows that when an offense is committed by several persons, by their joint effort, by their joint participation, by their joint action, how will the court or the authority, how the court or authority will fix the criminal liability to each person? Since sometime when the offense is committed by several persons, by their joint efforts, by their joint participation, we are not in position to determine the value of participation of each person. Then there is a problem to fix the criminal liability of each person. When the offense is committed by a single person, when you commit offense yourself alone, then there is no problem to fix the liability, to fix the criminal liability against you, because it is very clear that since you have committed the offense, you will have to face the punishment. But when more than one or more than one or more than two person or several person commit any offense, then there is a problem to ascertain their value of participation and accordingly their value of the punishment also. Since it is very difficult task, so the principle of constructive joint liability, the principle of constructive joint liability help us. And according to this principle of constructive joint liability, each and every person will be treated for the punishment in the same manner. The same thing has been interpreted, same thing has been enacted and provided under Section 34 and 149, adopting the principle of constructive joint liability. So what the Section 34 says? So firstly, we have to focus on the ways of the commission of the crime. How many ways thereby a person can commit crime. A person commits crime. Number one, when a person commits crime himself, or a person commits crime alone, there is no problem, as I told you. Secondly, when a person participates in doing crime with others. Thirdly, when a person abets any other person or instigates any other person or engages any other person for commission of crime, for committing crime. And fourth, when a person assists or helps the accused after the commission of the crime, like providing shelter for him, providing helping hands to to be absconded, or making help to destroy the evidence connecting with the crimes. These are all assistance which are made by the person after the commission of the crime to the offender. It is a fourth way to commit the offense. Now, first, third, and fourth are not relevant with the principle of constructive joint liability. The second is relevant, and second is fully associated with the principle of constructive joint liability. What is the second? The second category or second way to commit crime is when you participate with other person in doing crime. When you participate in doing crime with others. It is a soul, it is an element of the principle of constructive joint liability. The section 34 of the Indian Penal Code as well as section 149, both are entirely based upon this theory. Constructive joint liability also provides that sometimes a person is not treated responsible for his own act, but treated responsible for the act of others also. In other words, when you are punished not for your own act which you have committed, really, but for the act of any other person on certain ground or on certain circumstances, then it is said that you are responsible indirectly. You are responsible jointly. You are now being punished under the principle of constructive joint liability. This is the gist of the principle of constructive joint liability, which is nicely adopted, nicely incorporated under section 149 and 34 of the Indian Penal Code. Now let us try to understand what is the framing of the sentence of section 34. What does section 34 says? When any criminal act is done, or when a crime has been committed by several persons in furtherance of the common intention of all, or you may say in furtherance of their common intention, then each or every person, each of them will be treated or shall be responsible, shall be liable for that offense in the same manner as it were committed by him alone. When any offense, any crime has been committed by several persons in the furtherance of their common intention, then each of them shall be punished, shall be treated responsible in the same manner as the offense were committed by him alone. There you find that the entire section 34 is based upon the common intention. The section 34, which provides the vicarious liability, which provides the liability for the act of another person, act of others, is entirely based upon the common intention. Common intention is the soul of the section 34. You cannot just imagine the existence of section 34 without the existence of common intention. So what is the common intention? We will discuss later. Firstly, we have to focus on certain other important things of the section 34, related things. Now, number one, for the application of section 34, there must be a criminal act. Without having criminal act, without having any wrongful act means the crime, not only the wrongful act. Wrongful act may be taught also, but we are talking about the crime here. So there must be a crime, there must be a criminal act Criminal act means which is punishable, which is clear violation of the Indian Penal Code or law of crimes. So there must be a criminal act. Secondly, the criminal act must be done, must be committed by two or more persons. It means for application of section 34, we must have at least two persons. If the single person has committed any offence, the section 34 will not be applicable. Because there is no problem to fix a criminal liability against that person. A single person commits any offence, then he will be responsible. If the offence is proved, he will be responsible. There is no problem to fix the liability, fix the criminal liability against him. But when the number of offenders is two or more than two, then there is problem. Then the section 34 will be applicable. So it is a requirement of section 34 that there must be a criminal act, there must be a crime. Criminal act must be done by person, several person, and must be done by the several person, not only by one person. One more significant matter is related with this fact also, that there is a question. For example, 4 persons have committed any offence. The 4 persons commit any offence. But only one single person is brought before the court for trial. 3 other accused, either they are not identified or they are still absconded. There is a question whether a single person which is facing the trial of the criminal court can be punished according to the provisions of this section 34 or not. Because as you told, as I told you that minimum number of the accused must be at least 2 for the application of section 34. But in this case, in this example, it is well established that at the time of the commission of the offence, the number of accused was 4. But 3 are still absconded or not identified even. And only one person has been brought before the trial court. So whether section 34 will be applicable to him or not. In this regard, you have to study a very important case. This is the Harsad versus State, Nandu Dhaneshwar Nayak versus State of Odisha, Jagira Singh versus State of Punjab. In these cases, the Honorable Apex Court, including High Courts also, were in opinion that if it is proved by the evidence beyond a doubt that at the time of the commission of the offence, undoubtedly there were more than 2 persons. However, only one person was arrested, others are still absconded, are not identified even. Then the single person can be punished under the impression of section 34. If it is proved that, number one, that single person was present at the time of the commission of the offence, at the spot, at the place of the occurrence of the offence, and number second, he had common intention to others accused. He had common intention to other accused. He has common intention with other accused. If these 2 things are established, then a single person can also be punished under provisions of the section 34. But if in any case, if 4 persons were arrested for commission of any offense and tried by the competent court, but among three of among out of them, three are acquitted by the competent court, by the criminal court, on the basis of benefit of doubt. Four were prosecuted, or four were prosecuted for commission of the offense. Four were produced before the court, and after the hearing on the merit, if court decides that three must be acquitted under the benefit of doubt. Okay. Three person are acquitted under the benefit of doubt. The remaining single person shall not be punished, shall not be convicted under section 34. Since you have acquitted the three person on the benefit of doubt, they are not absconded, they are not dead, they are identified. But under certain circumstances, court has given them the benefit of doubt. Then the remaining single person shall not be punished under section 34. If you are going to punish him, then you must have a concrete evidence against him individually. He will not be punished according to the common intention, under the joint liability. So this is the second very important element of the section 34. Thirdly, the common intention. It is the soul of the section 34. As I told you, that without proving section 34, without proving the common intention among all the accused, you cannot exercise the provisions of section 34. It is a gist, it is a soul. The common intention is the soul of the section 34. What is the common intention? So firstly, we have to discuss the intention. Then the common intention, the concept of the common intention will be come out automatically. What is intention? Intention is a mindset. It is a thought. It is a mental preparation to do or not to do anything. If you are going to act, if you are going to do something, if you are going not to do anything even, then it is all depend on your intention. It's your mindset, your thinking. Whatever you think, whatever you prepare mentally, it's your intention. It is a wish, it is a desire, it is a purpose. And it is disclosed by your conduct. Conduct is a mirror. Conduct is like a mirror which shows your intention. Without conduct, you cannot prove the intention of any person. As I told you, intention is a mindset. Intention is a mental exercise. But until or unless it is disclosed, you cannot prove it. By the conduct of the human being, by the conduct of the person, his intention comes out. Intention gets its shape by the conduct. Okay? Now, what is the common intention? When you are going to commit any act, it may be offense, it may not be. But since we are talking about section 34, so We have to focus on the criminal act. So, you and your friends are going to commit any offense, any criminal act. So, definitely you have intention to commit the same. But you and your friends hold the different type of intention. Intention may be vary person to person. But when you share your intention to others and others share their intention to you, and all of you come to a point of agreement. Yes, now we are agreed to do that. Now your intention of all of you are merged, are mingled, are compound, are mixed to each other. Now there is no difference between your intention and intention of others. Such condition is set a common intention. For instance, for illustration, I say to my friends that we have to commit murder of one Mr. A. Sharma, which is connected to particular city or particular part of the city. My one friend getting my statement wrong sense. He is getting about some other A. Sharma, who is not the fellow about which I am saying. I am saying about a particular Mr. A. Sharma, but my friend is getting my statement, my saying in the context of any other A. Sharma. So he is confused regarding my intention. Whatever I am saying, he is not getting. And whatever he is getting, I am not saying. So this situation cannot be treated as a common intention. But we all, my friend and other person, comes to the point where everything is clear. Everything is clear without any confusion. What I am saying, they are getting. Whatever they are getting, exactly I am saying. In that point, the common intention comes out. Now, there is 4-5 persons, earlier 4-5 intentions. Now all intentions are merged and one common intention is developed. How it is possible? It is possible because of merge of the intention, because of communication of the intention to each other and agreement on a certain point. So it is a common intention. If it is not communicated to each other, then intention may be same, but same intention is not treated as a common intention. Okay? The Mehboob Shah versus King Emperor, the case of Mehboob Shah versus King Emperor is very important, which pointed out the difference between the same intention and the common intention. For example, A and B both have a common enemy, that he is M. A and B has a common enmity with the M. Both have intention to kill M, but both are unknown person to each other. Both are stranger to each other. Both have no idea regarding their intention. But incidentally, accidentally, fortunately and fortunately, in the same at the same place, at the same time, the same date, they find themselves together and striked and attacked over the aim, over the aim, according to their own planning, their own intention. Then they will be responsible according to their own act, not jointly, not equally. The section 34 will not be applicable here because they because they hold common, not, they hold same intention. They do not hold a common intention because they have not shared their intention to each other. However, they have same intention to kill the aim. To kill the M. But A and B both are stranger, both are unknown to each other. They don't have any idea regarding their intentions. They have not shared their intention to each other. So they have a same intention, not common intention. Until or unless the same intention is shared by each of them, it cannot become common intention. In the case of Mehboob Shah versus Emperor, it is held by the Supreme Council that when two accused arrived at the spot of the offense, at the place of the occurrence of the offense from different directions, and they started firing and killed the victim. They will not be treated that they have committed offense under their common intention because they did not have a meeting of mind. They did not share their intention to each other. Accidentally, incidentally, they arrived at the same place at the same time with same intention, but not with common intention. Now, third is, it's also very important that the common intention contains two elements. Number one, meeting of mind, the sharing of the intention to each other. This is meeting of mind. Pre-planning, you may say the pre-planning and meeting of mind. And the second is participation in doing crime. Participation may be identical, may be vital, and may be nominal. The volume of participation is not significant, but there must be participation. Without participation, you cannot say that the accused hold a common intention. What is the meaning of the participation? Participation means at least presence at the place of the occurrence of the offense, if it is necessary according to the nature of the crime, like murder, rape, dacoity, theft, etc. If the nature of crime requires the presence of the accused, then to fulfill the requirement, fulfill the necessity of the common intention, the participation is necessary, and participation includes the presence of the accused also, if the nature of the offense required so. What is the value of the participation? It doesn't matter. One very important case will make my point clear. Birendra Kumar Ghosh versus Emperor. In this case, this case is known as a Shankari Tola Dagghar case. In this case, a postmaster was killed with pistol fire, and one person, one accused, who was appellant in this case, had a contention that at the time of the murder he was standing at the door of the post office, and he was not the person, he was not that man who fired fatal shot, who killed the postmaster. I am the person who at the time of committing murder was standing at the door of the post office. So I must not be punished under section 34, under section 302, read with section 34. It was an appeal, final appeal before the Honorable Privy Council against the judgment of the trial court and the High Court also. The Lord Sumner was the Privy Council. Lord Sumner, the member of the Privy Council, was in opinion, and he quoted a line of the famous poet John Milton, that they also serve who stand and wait. Kindly pay the attention of this line. Lord Sumner delivered the judgment of this case, quoting a line of famous poet John Milton, that they also serve who stand and wait. It clearly shows, it clearly explains that the value of participation doesn't matter. Only the participation, there must be participation. What was the value, what was the gravity of the participation? It doesn't significant. In this case, the appellant was just standing at the door of the post office. He had not actively participated in committing murder. But since he had a common intention with all other accused, so he was punished under section 302, read with section 34, under the principle of constructive joint liability. So it's very clear that for application of the section 34, there must be common intention and participation in commission of the crime. The value of participation is not significant. Number 4th, this is also important to bring your notice, that the section 34 is a rule of the evidence. It is a rule of the procedure. It doesn't provide any definition of any specific crime. However, it is a part of the Indian Penal Code, but it doesn't provide any definition of any offense. It provides only a rule of procedure, rule of evidence, that when the offense has been committed by several persons, each and every person will be treated for the liability in the equal manner, in the same manner as the offense has been committed by him alone. It solves the problem which is generally arised when we are not in position to precisely ascertain the value of participation, and we are not in position to decide who did determinative strike, or who have caused the decisive hit. So we take the help of the principle of constructive joint liability. Since it is a rule of evidence, since it is a rule of procedure, so we must have a concrete opinion regarding the proof of common intention. If the prosecution is failed to establish the common intention among the accused, then Section 34 will not be applicable. The provisions of Section 34 will not be applicable, and the court will not be in position to convict any accused on the basis of the Section 34, and the principle of joint liability will not be applicable. Now, one more thing is also important to explain here, that the Section 149 is the next part of the constructive principle of the constructive joint liability. But the Section 149 is closely associated with the Section 141 of the same code. The Section 141 of the Indian Penal Code provides the definition of unlawful assembly. And without having a crystal clear concept regarding the unlawful assembly, we cannot touch the element of the Section 149. Because Section 141 provides regarding the common object. And common object is the soul of the Section 149. Is the common intention is the soul of the Section 34. In the same way, the common object is the soul of Section 149. What is the difference between the Section 149 and 134? It is very important for discussion. It is very important for discussion. Since it will take time, so it will be better for me and for you also that in our next meeting we'll discuss on the various points to differentiate the difference between the Section 149 and Section 34. Under what circumstances Section 149 will be applicable, and whether in place of Section 34 can we apply the Section 149 or not, and under what circumstances imposing Section 149 will be more comfortable in comparison of application of Section 34. It is also a matter of discussion. So it will be better for us to discuss this matter in our next meeting. And thank you so much for your patience hearing.